Hi, it's Simon. Notion just massively improved their databases with Notion automations. These are essentially a native if this then that automation feature directly in the Notion platform. This means one action can be set to trigger another across databases or in the same database. Today, I'll show you how you can start using it quickly and easily with my top use cases that I'm personally adding to my Notion setup. That includes automatic time tracking of tasks from a status column, generating default tasks for a project, database actions triggered by status updates, and even editing pages in one database when you do something in another. Now, it is first worth saying you can only create and edit automations in Notion if you have one of the paid plans. So if you have a free Notion account, you'll only be able to use or delete automations that you may have downloaded with a template. So if you want to try these out, watch this video for how it works, and I've linked my free task manager template below with some of the automations that we are doing here included in it so that you can check all that out. Now, before we dive into the full tutorial, I know a lot of you will be wondering, will I be adding these automations into my Notion LifeOS templates? And well, the answer is yes and no. For now, I want to focus more on tutorials like this one so that you can just easily add the automations yourself into your copy of the LifeOS template or any other template if you want to do it. The reason? Well, Notion will inevitably be updating these features again in the near future, and since these automations can only be edited on paid plans, I don't want to lock template users on free accounts into having to migrate to new versions when they want the updates because they can't edit them. Now that said, I am using a few of these to create much smoother and simpler daily habit tracker and journaling systems in the templates in the near future that I think you lot will love, so keep an eye out for that. And also keep an eye out for my forthcoming simplified Notion template update. It's coming, I think a lot of you will love it, and I'm going to be integrating these automations into that in a way that I think is really worthwhile. You can join the waiting list via the link in the description. First of all, let's look at the basics. I'm going to start in my essential task manager. This is the free task and project management template that I've created, where you can see projects, tasks, do a weekly project review, you can do lots of different things. Essentially, it's made up of a task list database and a project list database where everything can be viewed. So check it out. So first of all, let's look in the task list database, and you can see here, create and view automations. So hopefully that's turned up for you. And if you're on the paid plan, you can edit. So I'm going to click into it and you can do things like this. Now, if we create a new automation, you'll see you can name the automation. So tell yourself what it does. You can add a trigger, and that can be either when a page is added to the database or when a property is edited in that database. So for example, why don't we click on page added for now? Because I want to show you this. That's when this occurs, do this, if this then that. I click on add action, and you can do a number of things in here. We can add a page to any kind of database, this one or another. You can edit pages in this database or another, more on that later, where you need to be careful around that. And you can even send Slack notifications to a Slack channel. So for example, if I updated a task as done, that could be updating to a Slack channel. You can also edit a property within the same database. So for example, if I did something in the database, I could then edit another one based on it. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. So 3 different options. Now, if I go down to projects, it's also worth saying that when we set up an automation within here, if we click on a new automation, you can do it for pages in the entire database, or you can actually do it for specific filtered views. Now, the advantage of this is for my default tasks workaround, where you want to create an automatic set of default tasks within a project. You can do that for anything in that database, but also I could do it just for specific content projects. So for example, in this view, I've actually filtered by where the project type is a content project, and I have a specific automation which will create default tasks for a content project only if I do it within this view. Really cool. As an example, if I create a new one, there's my new project template, which I've set up. I'll show you that in a little bit. And we should see in a moment, all the new tasks turn up. There you go. They've all been created because it was a content project. I'll show you more about that in a bit. Now, before we get onto those more involved things like default tasks, I want to show you one of my favorite use cases for this. It's really simple and it's for a habit tracker. To show you that, I'm going to go into my simplified Notion Life OS. Just so you know, this isn't out yet. This is the new version that I'm developing. But if you join the waiting list below, you'll know when it's ready to download if you have version 2.0 or if you're interested in this simplified Notion Life OS system. So I've got these habit reports, right? Here they are, they report on how we're doing. Now if I go into my menu in this and go to the tracker, and I have this daily log, it's basically called @today. Now it used to be with a habit tracker that when you set up your today's log, you would only be able to have a created date. But I now have this, the date, and I prefer this so much more. Now what we used to do is type into these @today into the templates so that we were able to track what days they were on. But I'd really like to be able to see my entries on a calendar, and now you can do it. So this created date, I can actually hide that property, so I can always hide it. And last edited time, I also can hide that. And we can create this date. Now this is entered really simply by using an automation, and this is how it works. I'm going to go in here and you'll see set today's date. Let's create another one, so I'm just going to pause that one. I'm going to click into my automations and create a new automations, and we'll call this something, set today's date demo, and I want it to be for days and for whenever I'm logging a day in my habit tracker. I'm going to add the trigger when a page is added, and I'm going to add the action, which is to edit the date property to today, a dynamic date. I'm going to create that. It's exactly the same as this one. So what should happen is if I now create a new day, and in a couple of seconds, it updates it with the date. This is so powerful. If you're interested, by the way, I love how this works. Look, I just log yoga. It adds it to the list. You can view it inside today, and even better, it updates the numbers on my tracker. Really cool. So the next example is to edit pages in a different database. We have to be careful about this, but let me show you how this works. I have an automation in my journal, which is down here. This is just a place where I can create stoic journaling prompts that I can click on and fill out. So for example, I've got this new daily reflection. I can start the reflection, there's all these details within it. This is actually a standalone template if you want to grab the journaling template link below. But I've set this automation in here, which is to automatically link a new journal entry to the day that it was made on. And it means that I can essentially, in my daily log, always know when I've journaled. This is really cool. So let me show you what I mean by this. Here's today's entry. There's no journaling in there yet. So for example, what I might do is I can either click on my journal button like this and go, oh, I'm gonna do a monthly review. Set that up and you'll now see it's automatically linked to today. It's got a created date, which is great. And if I go back in, I'll now see it linked there. That's all because of the automation. This makes a really, really simple edit pages in option that's really worth using, but you've got to be careful with these. Here's how to make it. Let's just pause this one and create a new one. So in the journal, I'm going to link new entry to today log demo. So we're going to add a trigger when a new page is added in the journal. I want it to edit pages in days. Now you've got to be careful because the default for this is that it will edit every single page. So if I created one now with this running, it would essentially edit every single day in that database, and it can basically blitz your data. You've got to be super careful. So don't do that. If you use this, you have to make sure that you add a filter. Sorry. So for this to work, you'll have noticed that every entry, which is the current day, I have put @today in that page. So my filter has to be where the day contains @today, because every new entry looks like that. It's basically the template name. There's the filter, and I want it to edit property, journal entries, and add, not replace, because I might do more than one journal entry, this page. I'll create that. Let's now test it out. This time we'll create a new entry in the journal. I'm going to go into here and I'm going to do just a new daily reflection. Come back out. There it is, add it. And if we click into it, we should see that it's linked to today. A really powerful tool if you are using a template which has always got at today in it, this is a brilliant solution. So the template is in the day database, the journal is the journal database. I do the automation in the journal database, and I make sure that when a new page is added to my journal database, it uses a filter to find the day which is at today, and it will add the page I've just created into that relation, and we're always linking our journal entries to our days. How about that? Really cool. So next up, I want to show you how to do time tracking using these automations. So many of you on this channel have been asking me about it and how to put it into your LifeOS or your Notion system, and we can finally now do that with Notion automations. So if I click into my essential time tracking task manager, I have created essentially a time tracking dashboard, and you'll see in here that we have a couple of columns. We've got when a task was started, which is automatically set when we click a task to in progress, and then when a task is completed, which is automatically set and dropped in when it is put as a status of complete or done. And then that creates this result, which is essentially, it counts the minutes, and then I've done a rather complicated formula that takes various other columns and turns that into a kind of readable report. The issue, as Thomas Frank talks about in his version of looking at time tracking, is that Notion doesn't have a time unit in formulas just yet. Until then, we have to find solutions around it. So I've created my own, and I actually really like the way it presents. So it will break down how many full days, how many full hours, and then how many full minutes, and report it for us like that. Now, if you can see here, I've got something in progress. If I click this now to done, down here, we'll see the time turn up and then how long it's taken. There you go, that was in progress for 2 minutes. And you can see we have the report just there. Now, rather than teach you how to do all of this stuff, I will show you how to do a basic minute count for the formula and how to set these two tasks up now. But make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I will release a full time tracking demo in Notion very soon. And on that note, if you have a free plan or don't want to build this yourself, when you go to download my Essential Task Manager, you can opt to upgrade to my Essential Time Tracking Task Manager for a one-off fee, and you get a rather good value time tracker that you can integrate into your system with the automation set up. Right, let's dive into how this works very quickly. To add a time tracker, we're going to want to add new columns into our tasks database. So you could do that by wherever you store your database, jumping into the database and adding it. But what you also might want to do is create a filtered view, which is a bit like any of these of the tasks. You know, we've got these views here, tasks by due date and all of that stuff. But you might actually want to create a time tracking dashboard. So I've just created a new page, put my menu in there, and actually what I could do then is put it in here and find my time tracking dashboard, see it within the menu, and it's just a really simple view of to-do lists. All of them are in there, to do, in progress and done, grouped by project. Don't worry too much about that. Let's look at the basic automations. So the first thing we want to do is add a new column, and I want to add a date column. There it is. And we're going to call that task started time. You can set it to be whatever you want. I'm going to get it to be day, month, year, because that's what I do at home. I'm going to make it 24 hours. I'm then going to duplicate that and call this one task completed time. So we now have two date columns of when it gets started and when it gets finished. Now we need to add automations. A new automation, and we'll call this trigger task started. And we add a trigger, and that is when the status is set to in progress. Click done. So that's when it wants to trigger something. And the action, if something is set to in progress, I want my task started time to be set to this dynamic date, which is now. This moment and this minute, that's the one to pick, and create that. We're then going to create a second automation to finish it exactly the same way. So we're going to add a new automation. We're going to set the trigger when the status is set to complete, and I would like the action to be that the task completed time is set to now, and create it. Oh, and we forgot to name that one, so let's just name it task completed. There we go, save. So we now have those. Let's test them. I'm going to set this one to in progress and see if it turns up with a time. It did, there it is. And let's now set it to done and see if it sets another time. Great, so we can see that it's working. So now we just need to report on it. So on the simplest basis of this, this is how I would do it. Create a new column, and we're going to go to formula, duration in minutes. And I'm actually going to call this total duration in minutes because later on, if you see my other video, you might want to update it. So we want this to be, we're going to look up date between, there it is, and it's going to do from the completed time. You can just select it in the list. That's, you always do completed time first, comma, started time, then we put a little comma after the brackets of that, and then here you're going to write days, months, years, minutes, whatever you want. We want to do minutes. You could do it in hours if you like. I've got a few too many brackets in there. There we go. Date between, task completed time, task started time in minutes. Drop it in and there you go. So if we now set a to-do list item into in progress, I'm just going to sit here for a moment. We'll change, I'm out of breath now. We'll change that to done. And there you go, 1 minute. Now, if you want to change this and get it to report a bit more cleanly, the final thing to do with this is you can add a plus and then just write what you want. So it could be plus minutes spent, and you can just put a little space in before minutes, and there you go, that's the report. Now you'll see in my full version, I've done a lot more, which is to do it in days, hours, and minutes. And that essentially takes the full days in minutes divided by some times, the full hours in minutes divided by 60, and then the full minutes spent minus those other two in minutes, and it lists that out in a beautiful way. How about that? As I say, if you want to do more time tracking or use this template and take it into your system, check out the links in the description. Now the next one is an absolute cracker. We can now create default automated tasks for a project in Notion using these automations. Here's how it works. This is the default task automation I've created. So if we take a little look, generate default tasks. So I click onto here, you'll see that when a page is added, it adds new tasks and auto-populates the various columns of that task, including linking it back to the project. I'm going to show you how it works in just a moment, but first of all, let me show you what happens if we create a new project. So I'm going to click on my new project button as an example. It's going to create it, and you'll see already within that project there are 3 tasks that have been automatically created and linked back to it, and I can essentially do those. So for example, I want to name it first off, so let's call this one, that could be my project, and I'm going to set the aims, so I might call like that, yeah, and it can all go in there, and then I can drop that into done, or another way might be to look at all related tasks and check it as done and set up the initial project task. So that's just an example of how this might work, right? So that's pretty cool. Let me show you how you make it. So we're going to create a new automation in the projects database. And if you're interested to know, the way that this system works is essentially you have a task database and then you have a project database that is linked as a relational column. So this is where you can link it to other projects, right? Simple as that. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the automation button and we're going to add a new automation. So we're going to call this one create default tasks for all new projects. Now what's interesting about this is you can do it by view. So what I could do is set up a view that's just for video projects, just for personal life projects, and you could set for each of those views, when you create a new project, you would then be able to set specific default tasks for those. So that would be a workaround at the moment to be able to filter them by particular types. But we're just going to do this for all projects as an example. We're going to add the trigger, and that is when a page is added to the database. And then, so when it does this, I want to add an action and I want to add a page too, but now I want to pick a different database, which is the tasks database. So when a project is added to this database, I want to add another one to the tasks. I'm going to use my template because it's nice to link it to the template, and we're going to edit a property and we're going to call it set aims and project timeline, for example. I'm going to edit another property in here and we can set different things. So for example, I might want to set the due date for when you're setting aims. It's probably when you create it. So I'm going to actually set the due date as this dynamic date. I can pick a date, but I'm actually going to go today because that will always be the day that you've created. And I'm going to add another property. Probably the most important bit here is that you set the project. So when I select project, I want to link it to this page. Now that means that whatever page is created, it will have the tasks linked to it. Really important that you use that. Great. Now you could add status, but my new task template already sets the status, so I don't need to do that. And I'm going to create it. There we go. So let's test it. Now it's really important to note that I have a project template. So if we just open that and edit that quickly so you can see what it is, the project template already has a view of tasks within it, filtered by the project template page. So it means that it will show you everything it needs to show you. So let's close this back down and let's create a new project. It will generate the project and you should see in my reports, there you go, it's updated and added that initial task. Let's just name this one. And there it is. Now, if you wanted to add more, you can just go in and edit this as far as you like and add further tasks. You can add another page to the task database and it will just drop it in below. And you'll now see if we generate another project, this time we should see 2 turn up in the list. That's how it works. Pretty cool. Now then, I thought you'd want to see a little bonus as an automation that can trigger further actions based on status changes to tasks. You can also check out my full dedicated video on this after this if you want to. So, for example, what we might do here is in projects, I've set up a really simple one, which is this one down here, archive projects when status is marked complete. Now this is just an example. You don't necessarily need to do this. You could just set your filters by when status is set, but it's a really good example of what we can do. So if we go into my Notion automation video demo, let's just open this up so you can see archive. I'm going to select that this is done, and in a moment you should see this turn to completed. There it goes. Now what that means is it's disappeared and it has been archived. And in this system, if I go into my project dashboard, I then have down here, an archive and completed view, and you can see everything is completed. So let's take another example of this in the task database. To do that, I'm going to go into my Notion video task list that we've got here, and we've got all of these task lists. So we're going to set an automation to update the assignee. Now what we can see is I have my various tasks. So let's say research video is done, film video is done, editing video was in progress because my editor was editing it, but then she completes that and wants me to see it. So she can put it into review, wait for a moment, and it updates to me. Really cool. So I'm genuinely so excited by how far Notion has come over the years as an all-in-one productivity solution, and automations are just going to make this better. So don't forget, you can check out an in-depth tour of my complete life operating system that I've built completely in Notion, and download it at bettercreating.com. I've created a powerful and easy to use full Notion template that tracks your tasks, projects, habits, goals, knowledge, all in one place. It really is a complete template that I think you'll love. It's designed around David Allen's seminal productivity workflow from Getting Things Done and Tiago Forte's Power Method. It is the ultimate second brain that I genuinely use every day to organize my entire life. And what's great is we've got supporting playlists of guide videos, a user community Discord where you can get further help and talk to other users, and I'm planning some further community-only resources soon. So this really is a great bet. And if you are newer to Notion or would prefer a simpler setup, do also check out my simplified Notion LifeOS template too. It's perfect for those who want the essential functions but could feel a little overwhelmed by having too many. Now, after 3 years of tweaking, learning, and simplifying, these templates really are the second brain solutions I've dreamed of building. And you can even check those out in confidence due to my 30-day return policy. So make sure you jump to bettercreating.com/LifeOS and check them out. Next up, I recommend watching this video to learn more about using Notion to organize your life. And here, watch this for some desk setup suggestions I think you'll love. It would be awesome if you subscribed if you haven't, and I'd better get back to creating.